Today we're talking about early mid-game campaign, how to tweak battles. For the most part, your heroes are going to go directly across from who's facing them. So, for instance, if we're on a battle, you've got Damon here. He's going to be going across to the bottom level Kasos. Astrilda against to the Brutus. Wukong across. Eironn across. Rowan across. So, that's for the most part how the AI thinks, but not in all cases. Understanding how to manipulate the AI pathing is important in progression and clearing stages. If you think of it as a puzzle, run the battle with your highest tier characters. You just see what happens. So we're going to run this battle. We're going to see what happens. Characters do what they're going to do. We're going to lose. And then it's important to, afterwards, look at who did the most damage where. So we can see here we've got the two K-sauces that are doing the majority of the damage, so they kind of are the first problem to deal with. And then likewise, we can see on our team who's doing damage, who's taking damage, who's healing. And again, it's kind of important to understand what characters do what in order to be able to fix that. If someone's not providing much benefit, it's possible that you need to just switch to a different character. So like for instance, Wukong here is kind of arguably he's doing the most damage, but he's not healing for anything and he's not taking that much damage, and therefore he could be maybe a better person. There could be someone else that could be better fit in that role. It's not always the case though. And so one thing I wanted to talk about today is the way that certain characters react and have their individual abilities do things which are not inherent to new players. So for instance, we've got Astrilda. She is this knight character at the top in the first position. If you'll watch here, I'm going to run the battle. She has an ability where she starts running towards the other person, and slow that down. And the first thing that happens is she knocks them back. That's great for formation. That's great for understanding how to group enemies. And likewise, if you're against an Astrilda, then you need to be able to kind of understand that that's going to happen to you right off the bat. Certain characters are immune to that push. Characters like Rowan, characters like Alna, they for whatever reason they just don't get pushed at all. So you still see the animation come out from Astrilda, but they don't get moved. And that helps a lot because it means that they're not going to be getting interrupted. And then they can still do what they need to do. For instance, Rowan is a great frontline tank for this reason. He has the ability to, if you move him into a position where normally he might get knocked back, like this Brutus will knock back, and if I run the Rowan in the front, you'll see that doesn't move at all. And at that point, he can still provide the buffs, the potions, things that he needs to do in order to help his team succeed without having to worry about that one small thing. So that's the Astrilda knockback. The second thing I want to talk about today is Eironn. His pull is a very interesting mechanic. He has the ability to, if you see he's in the back row here on the second position, he will pull a specific number of enemies a few seconds after the fight starts. So for instance, in this case, he's going to be pulling this Brutus and the two K-sauces. That's the way that the animation goes. But if for something causes these characters to run out, like let's say we've got a character that runs away, right? So let's say we have Rosaline. We'll talk about Rosaline here in a second. But if Rosaline is running to Wukong to assist, when we hit play, you'll see that they start to run away, and see how Brutus walks out? That we did catch him in that, but not always. Sometimes the characters will run out of the scripting animation, and it will cause them to not get pulled in. So again, something to think about if your Eironn is not pulling everybody in, and something is causing a character to move out of the way beforehand, that's the reason why. Likewise, wherever he is sitting in the battle, it does dictate who he pulls in. So in this case, almost always, Eironn wants to be in the back. That's the greatest effect because you can pull in 3 different characters, right? So we'll just watch that. Pulls in these 3 characters right here, pulls them all in. So you only have the 2 outsides left. And again, good for potentially solving your problem. If you put him on the outside, he only pulls in these top 2 characters, or only pulls in these bottom 2 characters. And again, that can be helpful, but it's not always. So it's just something that if you have like a specific character that's doing a lot of damage, like if this Belinda in this match was doing all the damage, and we wanted a solution for how to knock her off her game so that we can get more damage in before our characters die and thus win the fight, putting an Eironn here can be a great asset, because immediately when the battle starts, she doesn't even get a chance to move or do anything. She just gets pulled. Again, it's not a fix. It's just something that can work. A better character, which I can't show you on this account because she's not leveled, is Nara. Nara has a chain that she pulls with, which is really great. She has to be leveled in order to use it, but it's actually a better interrupt because she can pull, again, this character over to the other side of the screen, and thus take them away from their comp, take them away from doing their ability. It actually does interrupt sometimes too. So for instance, if you have a Lucius that you're fighting against in the front row, put a Nara there, and a lot of times if her tenacity is high enough, she will counter his shield right off the bat and prevent him from being able to essentially like invulnerable the whole team. So that's a really good fix. On to Rosaline. Again, this is another issue that we have. So you can select, Rosaline's a very interesting character. She's one of the only characters in the game that you can do this. You can select which character you want her to follow. So if we want her to follow Odin, down here in the bottom right hand corner, when the battle starts, she's just going to run at him. She's going to run away from him. And you notice how she missed the Brutus. Normally, Brutus would knock her back. But in this case, so like let's say that she was following Astrilda at the top, she's going to get caught by that Brutus hit. She's going to get knocked back. She dodged it. So if you just had a normal character there, they would have got hit by the knockback. It would have affected them. But Rosaline, because she has that run feature, can actually be put in the front row a lot of the time, and it will just completely avoid that mechanic. It's kind of like having a tank without having a tank, if that makes sense. But it's interesting to think about in positioning, because she provides a really great benefit to whatever character she's following. She allows them to kind of ult twice as fast, or I would say twice as much. But she does end up being kind of weak. And so therefore you want to think about where you're placing her. Is she getting killed right off the bat? Is she not even providing anything? She's a great character, and if you're able to take advantage of her, great. But if she's in the back row and she has less of a chance of dying and immediately coming to support the character that she's going after, then maybe that's something that you want to do, to think about in order to be able to clear whatever level you're on. Some of the another character, again, we're talking about like front row tanks that really help, is Taline. So Taline is an interesting character because she can't die. She's, again, one of the only characters that can't do that do this. Both her and the awakened version of herself just cannot die. She's a phoenix. It makes sense thematically, but a lot of times what ends up happening is if you put them in the front row like this, they will take a massive amount of damage because the game is set up in a way where it just unloads everything, right? It never holds back. So, and this is much more true at higher deficit, but when moves do bazillions of damage and you're not able to combat that right off the bat, it's helpful to be able to have people that either can go invulnerable or can essentially mitigate the damage to a point where it doesn't even really matter. Cases of that are like if you had the barricade artifact. If you're on a character that's invulnerable, like Brutus, and they take the damage from somebody else that's, again, essentially absorbing so much team damage to die, and then all of a sudden it gets negated and put onto a character that's invulnerable that can't take damage, then all of a sudden you don't have to deal with that amount of damage anymore. The whole battle has changed. And likewise with Taline, she might die right off the bat, which is fine, because what ends up happening is that she dies, and then now that damage is taken up, it's gone off the battle, and then when she gets to return, she comes back to life and starts healing. So it's like an added benefit where I think we're going to win this because of that. Oh, we're going to get close. Maybe not. We'll see. Okay, we didn't win. But the point is that if you have that kind of dynamic where she is dead, takes all the damage off your other characters, essentially soaking it up like a tank is supposed to do, and then they start going to different directions. They start saying, well, okay, well that enemy's dead, let's go after the next one. They're not anticipating her to get back up after she gets to 50% of her health. So she's regenerating, comes back to life, and then starts immediately healing. And that's super clutch for solving a lot of your issues with battles and why you're not being able to complete them. Some of the other characters, again, we're not going to be able to look at on this account, so I'm going to switch accounts. But before I switch over there, I did want to talk about the Awaken heroes. So one character that I really like, not for anything other than just this ability, because I think that they're actually not that great of a character, is the Awaken version of Aziz. He has this really interesting dynamic where whatever character that he's faced against, so in this case we're going against Belinda, right? We're opposite Belinda. You hit battle, and right off the bat, freezes her. Just negates her out of the battle for a really long time. Probably like 15 seconds or so. And again, that can be very clutch to solving your problems. If you have a character that's doing just way too much damage, just killing everybody, and you put an Awaken Aziz across from them, that could be your solution. Again, much higher deficit. This won't work as well because characters have more... They have more of the ability to resist things, so it's not going to happen all the time. But it's really great for initial, again, in this like kind of early to mid-game zone. Another one is, again, talking about that whole push. The push and pull characters are really great because they disrupt the enemy formation. They make it so they're clumped together. If you have certain characters that can take advantage of that, like Oden is really great because he has that lightning move, which I don't know if he'll be able to see it, but he has a move where he puts down these portals on the ground, and anything between the portals just gets zapped with lightning and does a ton of damage. Even more so later on when you get better artifacts. But you see here, we're taking massive amounts of like AoE damage. So they're all clumped together, and they're taking damage as a result. So that's great for formation. If you have an Eironn that's pulling everybody into that same spot, you can manipulate that, and you can kind of use it to essentially disrupt what they're doing so they don't even get a chance to do it before they're just dead. A great character for that is Pippa. Pippa has two moves. It's kind of the same move, but depending on where she is on the battle, it will have a different effect. So for instance, let's take Astrilda here, and we'll put Pippa in the top row. One thing that Pippa will do in the top row or the bottom row, whoever is the person that's in front of them, so in this case we've got Pippa to Astrilda, or if we move her down here, Pippa to Damon, she will throw them. She throws them, watch, we'll see her disappear. Maybe she needs to be a higher level to do this. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like she needs to be higher level to do this. So this will work on my main account, but not so much on this one. Let's see if we have Thorin. Do we have Thorin? Yeah, still not doing it. But the important thing is that that is how it will work. She'll throw whatever this character is into the pack with the most densely grouped amount of enemies. So in this case, if you've got Eironn pulling all the enemies in, what will end up happening most of the time is that she'll drop that character right on top of all of them, which is great for things like the cheese comps, Lucrezia and Thorin. But it also can be good just in general if they're like a really big like AoE, like they need to take a lot of damage to do damage kind of characters. That can be really helpful. If they're a stun character, then that means that they're going to be in the group automatically to do the most disruption. So that's really great. If she's in the middle, she has a completely separate mechanic, which again I don't know if it'll do this at this level, but she'll pick somebody and she'll again warp them. She just drops them wherever. Oden does a similar thing. So there's a whole comp based on their abilities called Portal Party, where they together drop two different characters into two different places. And again, that's really great for disruption. It makes it so that the enemy can't get that damage rolling. And that's really what all of this early mid game campaign, or in this case the King's Tower, all of that is it's all basically just a puzzle, right? And in these cases, you need these kind of techniques and tools that are not inherent when you first start playing the game in order to solve these puzzles. So let's go on the main account just really quick before we go, and we can see a couple of other characters that have similar moves that can help just from them being on the battle and just being able to manipulate the course of fights. So again, we talked about Pippa. Hopefully we can show you one here that makes more sense. All right, so here's Pippa in this formation. Again, we'll see here what I was talking about with the whole portaling. Sometimes because of this high deficit, she won't do it, but we saw her do it there. So essentially what ends up happening is she portals Thorin to the most densely packed group of mobs. Here, he just got dropped in right there. And that can help him for the cheese later on because he's in a better position to do damage. There he is, starting the cheese. We'll see if it works. It did a lot of damage, but okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that if she's in the middle here, again, you did see this before, but we'll see her she'll grab somebody and she'll portal them. She'll just portal them right on top of it. So that's really helpful, again, for disruption. Other characters that are in this battle that can help are Leica. So Leica's right here. Leica has an ability that gives you haste right off the bat. She doesn't have to even do anything. She could come in and die instantly, and she would essentially have provided all of the benefit to that battle. So that's helpful. Like for instance, in this cheese comp, we want to get Thorin going as fast as possible. So we've got call on him. We don't have call on anybody else. Later on, there's a better effect for call, but in the early game, you don't have a 5-star call, so you don't really get to take advantage of its secondary ability right here, which is fine. So that call essentially makes it so that he just starts getting up his energy bar as fast as possible. We've got Rowan in the back. Rowan in the back will give essentially initial energy to everybody that's touching them. So for instance, in this case, all these characters will get bonus energy just off the start of the battle because of Rowan's abilities. If Rowan were in this top row, it would not give it to Mishka or Leica because it's not touching. So again, kind of an inherent thing that isn't really talked about, but hopefully that helps you. So yeah, Leica will provide her haste to everybody regardless of where she's positioned. So she can be in the front, die instantly, and that's fine. She can be in the back, hopefully maybe get some damage off before she dies, and that's fine. The real benefit is her haste. Mishka provides energy, provides stunning on this character, and that's great too. Another character that I want to talk about is, and I might not be able to do it because of the deficit level here, but is Lorzan. So Lorzan, if you see right here, Lorzan started the battle, and where their positioning matters. If you see this blue line right here, this blue line is linked. So whatever damage that this character takes, this damage this character also takes. Just Lorzan being in the fight and being able to provide this ability makes it so that there's just so much more damage on the enemy side. And that can be really crucial to things like the cheese comp, because if you have a ranged character that doesn't get pulled in and is staying way off to the side, when everybody gets pulled in and they start doing the cheese, at that point, if they're not in that group, they're not going to take that much damage. But if they're linked to the group, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter about their positioning. They're just going to die anyway, or they're at least going to be closer to death. So in this case, Lorzan in this will link Lucian and her down to the bottom. And again, that helps with incoming damage. If we move him around, it will actually change it up. So for instance, Lorzen is here, Lucian is here. If we move Lorzen down here, it will now link Baden and Kelther. So we'll start the battle. We'll see that link pop up. Link goes here to there. Oh, Kelther moved over. But yeah, anyway, so there's your link of damage. And whatever damage this character takes, this one will also take. And that happens for the whole battle. So again, for in any case, if Lorzen comes down and puts down the link and then dies, he's done his job. That's really all that he was really required to do. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always help, I should say. But in some of the cases where you need it to, you need that formation to be a specific thing, it can be super clutch. So that's really the best thing about some of these wilder characters. You don't have to have them built in order to have them do this. You've got Lorzen, Leica, and Pippa. All of them can just be base level copies as long as they're high enough level. They will do these abilities in the way that we've talked about. Again, if you look on this account, I've got Eironn at Elite Plus. I've got Pippa at Elite Plus. Thorzen at Elite Plus. The only thing you need to run into is that sometimes if they're too low of level, you won't be able to use them in the same way because you need a specific combat rating. So for instance, we're gonna do this battle and it says your team isn't strong enough yet. It needs to be at least 574, and we've got 516. So just them being on the battle will solve it, but them being at a lower level could potentially mean that you wouldn't be able to do it. Like for instance, if you didn't need Leica's Haste here and you instead put Pippa here, now you can see we're too low. 564, too low. We can't do the battle in this state. So that's why sometimes it's better to have those characters. This is much later on that you're going to run into these problems, but in the early game, don't worry about building them almost at all. They're not really important. They only need to be able to survive long enough to do their ability, and then they're fine to just die. Other characters that are really helpful towards, again, some of the initial things that they can do are one is that's really great is Nara, we already talked about. So she has a really annoying ability where she will just freeze whoever has the highest combat rating for a really long time, taking them completely out of the fight. Really great CC, whatever. So if we didn't want that to affect our characters to be able to continue going, then having a Nara directly placed across her, we talked about earlier, can really help because, there we go. Nope. So the battle starts. She instantly gets pulled. No, Nara just died. I think Nara might not have any gear on. Oh, there it goes. So she instantly gets pulled, and that stops her from essentially stunning one of our guys. If we didn't have Nara here for this case, well, we're going to watch, and she's immediately going to free somebody. Sometimes the AI in this game is very interesting. It just chooses not to use abilities based on positioning. So like in this case, I'm not even getting... Like they're not even doing the abilities that you'd have to counter. Again, which is not always the case, but it's just like really small things that matter that for whatever reason the enemy AI doesn't understand. So like it just understands combat levels. It understands things that it wants to do. You've got rogue characters that will teleport in, and they essentially target either the weakest or the strongest characters based on combat level. In her case, her CC goes off, and it goes off of the strongest combat level. So it's possible that there was more than one character that was around the same combat level. So like her AI couldn't figure out which one to stun, so it just didn't do anybody. But Nara would be normally a good example of how to combat that. We talked about Lucius earlier. Lucius has a really annoying shield that he'll put up that invulnerables the entire team. It's okay on your side. It's impossible to deal with, or sorry, it's impossible to ignore, I would say, on the enemy side, because there's just points where they're just doing so much damage, and you're not able to essentially fix it. So we're gonna watch his health bar go up here, or his energy bar. If he gets it off, he might not get it off though. Oh, the cheese is happening? So two ways that you can deal with Lucius, or any character that has ults that you really just want to avoid. Oden, this is a little bit later. You'll get this ability, this artifact, the Windbinder. It essentially gives one of your characters immediate energy right off the bat, and that's really helpful for if their ult is really important. Oden has a really great ult that essentially targets an enemy that has the highest energy and just saps it all out, just completely negates it. And so in this case, if I put him pretty close to Lucius, when you start the fight, you can see that the energy just gets sapped, and like he can't build it up fast enough in order to be able to shield his team, which is great. Obviously, if your Oden dies, so there you actually saw Oden use it against Pharrell here. You saw essentially his health bar was almost full, had the most energy on the whole team, and then he just sapped it all away. Now in this case, Lucius got his shield off. Again, super annoying to deal with, but Oden in the right positioning with that Windbinder can just take him out of the fight. Essentially, if his shield doesn't go up, all of his usefulness goes away, and that means that it's one useless character on the team, and it's 5 versus 4, so to speak. So they can just take damage and then just die. So that's a really great solution. Another one is Pharrell. So you've got, again, he actually works pretty well at lower levels. You don't have to have him built out in order to be able to do these things. But Pharrell has a lot of really great abilities that drain energy. So just having a Pharrell on your team sometimes can sway the whole fight, because they've just taken enough energy out of the enemy team to be able to have them not do their ults as fast. And if you get to the point where they're not doing it as fast, they might die before they even get a chance to ult. Again, reducing their effect on the fight almost completely. So Pharrell is really, really great for those reasons. Similar to what we talked about with Nara, to Aziz, to Oden with the portaling, the disruption, Eironn for the pull, Astrilda and a Brutus for their push techniques. All those things disrupt, and any of that disruption can be the solution that your puzzle needs in order to be able to just clutch that little bit of damage at the very end. Again, this is kind of getting into some of that mid-game stuff, but pets are a really big effect on the small bits that you need to just complete the puzzle. It might just be a small thing, but it's something that can be a deciding factor. In the beginning, I mean, there's tons of pets, and that's fine, but as beginning players, you won't have access to almost any of these, because they're more rare, they're harder to build up. Whereas you do get access to what I would call the damage, the buff, and the heal pets. These are the 3 ones that really help you in the beginning of the campaign. Initially, you only have access to the damage one. That just provides stats. It just does additional damage whenever it cools down. So if we'll see here, we're going to watch its energy bar fill up. And as it's filling up, it's not really doing anything. And once it pops, you'll see it pops out and then does damage to everybody that's around it. So that damage can be great because it hits the whole enemy team. And if you don't have an AoE character, but you do have some really strong individual DPS characters, that can be really great, because it will help during the whole course of the fight, just overall DPS everyone. And that could be a clutch thing where maybe your single target DPS is targeting somebody, but someone else is about to die, and the ball comes out and just takes them out. So that's really, really great. Another thing is that if your characters are dying too quickly, you can switch to the heal. Again, similar effect, but the difference is just once their bar fills up, they pop out on the screen and then just heal everybody. And there's an added benefit to the heal pet, and that's that if they heal somebody that's already at full health, the amount that they healed them will then be projected into a shield. So that just takes a little bit more damage out of it. So there's really not a case for the heal pet to really ever be bad unless you need something else in the fight. And the last one is your buff pet. The buff pet's really great because they do a couple of things. One, it can be just something that what I would suggest is that you build each of these pets in a way that supports a different role. So if you have, I would say, like the damage ball, you could build strength. The buff ball, you could build agility, and the heal ball, you could build intellect. And this just gives you some options. Like for instance, if you have a character that needs to be boosted during a fight, you can switch to the intellect pet and then give more intellect buffs than you would something else. Again, eventually you're going to get them all to max level 18 anyway, doesn't matter. And then later on, once you get into multi-team fights, you probably won't even be using these pets at all. But in the early games, they can really be the deciding factor. If you are pushing a level and you just can't get it, sometimes switching that pet is the solution, because it just provides enough of a heal for your characters not to die, and then to continue going on to DPSing, to mitigating, to healing, whatever. In this case, once you get the buff pet up to a certain level, they actually will provide an instant buff. So they'll drop down on the screen. Watch. They don't even get a chance to do anything else. They immediately buff everybody, and they give them attack power, and I think defense. So those two things can be really crucial towards specific characters. If you have a character that needs to, that really likes stats in general, like for instance, let's go ahead and we'll swap into, well, I don't have Scarlet built on this. I'm just not using her right now. But normally, Scarlet is a character that does lots of damage. But the way that she does lots of damage is by getting buffed in that way. So, for instance, having this pet out while you have Scarlet out will mean that she'll do way more damage when she ults, and she ults all the time. So that can be a deciding factor. Lucrezia is another one of those characters that almost always, any comp you see, like we're going to the formations here, and we'll find arguably any of these Lucrezia fights, these all use damage pets. When you're doing really difficult stages, we'll go into the campaign, we'll see if we can find one there. So here's one. Lucrezia does all the damage, essentially. She's just doing her cheese comp, and you've got the buff pet right there. So the buff pet provides a lot of initial damage, because when she ults, she goes insane, and any additional stats on her will be almost exponential on the other side of that. So characters that can really help that are the buff pet. Another character that really helps that is actually the awakened version of Thane. He has an ability where it says right here at the start of the battle, they receive all the characters that are on the thing will have 4 stacks, or he has 4 stacks and everyone else gets 2, and it makes it so that during the first 2 hits that they do, it increases their attack ratings 4%, their crit damage amplification by 3. If allied heroes receive damage from a single attack that exceeds 20% of their max health, then they lose 1. Anyway, the point is that they just get buffed, right? So if you have Lucrezia on that team, and you put Awakened Thane and the damage pet, that can be a lot of just burst damage on that one character. And again, hopefully it helps you solve the fight. It's not always the answer. None of these are always the answer. I can say that while doing the campaign, my main 2 ways of dealing with the enemy in any case was I had a build that was basically like this. So let's say that this is my build, right? Every single time I'd run into a problem, the solution was always, okay, do I need extra healing? I'll put Silas. Silas has the ability to buff people, and they can do way more damage. So sometimes you can get it so that they buff your carry, and then they can just pump damage. That can be really, really clutch. Another thing was, is the enemy ulting too fast? Can I not deal with that? Put in Pharrell. Pharrell will solve a lot of that problem for you. And then the last one is Nara. Nara essentially just full disruption of one specific character, and that could be really, really important. You can also stack these characters together to make really interesting results. So like, for instance, I could put Nara up here. I could put Eironn in the middle, and then I could put Pippa on this side, and essentially almost the whole back row just gets pulled. You'll watch and see here. Watch everyone get pulled over. Pull, and then portaled. So everyone gets disrupted. Again, that doesn't help you all the time, but it's something that to think about when trying to figure out what's the thing that's killing me. So hopefully this all helps. Hopefully you guys take this this advice into a way that can help you productively and get through the campaign.